RonPaulInstitute.org is really making waves with the syndicated columns that I see in newspapers all over the country. They're doing syndicated radio vignettes that are on many of these same stations. He's doing satellite television, getting picked up around the world. He's doing radio interviews almost every day. He is, I think, almost more effective now than when he was in Congress from 1996 until just a year or so ago. His son is one of the major front runners for president. We're going to talk about that and more. Joining us is former congressman and the leader of the Libertarian Liberty Movement worldwide, Dr. Ron Paul. And DrudgeReport.com picked it up. We picked it up. It got a lot of attention. Ron Paul's predictions really for 2015 and beyond, what he sees coming in the new year. Now, he wrote that a few weeks ago. Now we're into the new year. Now a lot of economists are saying they believe that the real economic implosion is getting closer. So he's going to spend 20 minutes with us, giving us his breakdown of what he sees coming. And remember, as he said many times, if we put out the ideas of liberty as the solution to the crisis, we could use the crisis at the end of this cycle to try to promote freedom and fix things. The socialists and the insiders are going to try to use it to bring in more tyranny. So we're reaching that critical point. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be with you again.
You've got the floor. Tell us what you see coming.
Well, even though I wrote something, I think it was about 18 pages long, but it was longer. When I was doing it, I was thinking about my special orders that I used to do on the House floor when you could get a special hour. So it goes over, the analysis of what's going on and why we have trouble and what I think we should do. But actually, the motivation for me to start to write it was just to write something much shorter and talk about the crisis in the inner city, the militarization of our police, the abuse of our civil liberties. At the same time, the demands of the inner cities, because I sympathize with those who are on the receiving end of the militarization of the police. At the same time, those individuals in the inner city are, they have been used to an entitlement mentality, and it just serves their interest to demand more and more, and then we end up in a conflict. Well, each side has different demands. I think each side are wrong to a degree, but I certainly think that the big issue of the inner cities, and I mentioned in my paper that this has been going on for a long time. I think it was even in the 60s, the riots we had in the 60s had a lot to do with the inner cities and the poverty in the inner cities. Everybody agrees there's poverty there, but some people think, well, we need more government transfer programs, which I don't agree with, but we need to understand first that we protect civil liberties for everybody equally. At the same time, we have to understand poverty. Then you have to get into economic policy. You have to get into the Federal Reserve, the destruction of the currency, the destruction of the middle class, and why the welfare state ends up getting the very wealthy people in charge of the distribution of wealth. So I've always maintained that welfareism, the principle is so bad, but it's accepted by the far left and the people who want something for free, but they don't get anything because the people who are really in charge, the bankers in the military-industrial complex, they get in charge and they use that principle to their benefit. And I think that's the mess that we're in today, because the cities are getting poorer, the middle class is being eliminated, and there's these constant demands, and I think it's because we've lost our way in the understanding of what personal liberty is all about, and property rights, and sound money, and all the things I've talked about for so long. So I saw the big debate between the militarization of the police and the people who are on the receiving end and the poverty in the inner city as a consequence of a lot of ignorance as far as what is good economic policy and what true liberty is all about. I mean, true liberty doesn't mean that you get what you want and you demand it and that you're entitled to it. That has nothing to do with liberty. That represents a violation of liberty. So that is the general theme of what I was writing about, but even though most of it was warning people and telling people what a mess I think we're in, I really conclude with a bit of optimism, as I always do, that, the Internet is providing us a vehicle for getting our message out. And I think that, the message is alive and well. I think the young people are listening. I think what you do on radio and all your efforts, I think, is very beneficial, and a lot of people realize the mess we're in, that the economy is in shambles and the foreign policy is ridiculous. So they're looking for answers, and I believe the freedom movement provides those answers.
Well, and certainly we've predicted what's coming. You've written books on the subjects. We know how this works. We're not rocket scientists. This has happened hundreds and hundreds of times in history, or even more, hundreds of times in different countries just in the last few hundred years.
You are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.